At most colleges, Greek life plays a big role in students' social lives. There are currently 3 on-campus fraternities and 4 underground fraternities at Lafayette. Although only 35% of Lafayette students are members of on-campus Greek life, most students attend social events hosted by frats. Fraternities in general come with the reputation of being hypermasculine environments that transform boys into sexist alcoholics. Due to these stereotypes, I want to look into the correlation between fraternity membership and hypermasculinity, along with the negative behaviors that fraternities generally promote. In Inside Greek U, Alan D. DeSantis claims that heterosexual promiscuity, toughness and assertiveness, imposing physical type, relational independence, and professional orientation are the gender themes which fraternity members strive to embody.
Heterosexual promiscuity promotes an environment focused on sexual interactions. Members of fraternities strive to perform sexual acts with as many women as possible in hopes of gaining the acceptance and admiration of their brothers. This leads to the objectification of women and increases the likelihood of sexual aggression. Emphasis on toughness and assertiveness pushes members of fraternities to act dominant in all social situations. Showing weakness may result in disrespect from other fraternity members, so members must constantly make a conscious effort to fit a hegemonic ideal. Promoting muscular physique tells men in a fraternity that in order to be masculine, you have to look masculine. Obsessing over who lifts the most or has the largest biceps leads fraternity members to look down upon those who may appear scrawny or weak. To be accepted in this environment, members have to remain physically ideal. In fraternities, being reliant on a relationship is generally unacceptable. In an environment that idolizes hegemonic masculinity, a man cannot be fully accepted if he is not dominant in relations with females. Lastly, fraternity members are expected to be successful in the business and public world. They should be well-liked and destined for occupational greatness. This pressures fraternity members to focus on materialism and financial and social success.
Combining these themes, we can see how an environment focused on the gender norms promotes hypermasculinity. Men in or trying to be in a fraternity are encouraged to fit into the mold of the typical frat boy. Unfortunately, hypermasculinity, especially in an environment with frequent substance abuse, leads to behavioral issues. In this highly masculine setting, fraternities often create environments that condone the objectification of females. Members often view being in a relationship as being dependent on a female, making relationships nearly unacceptable. An emphasis on sexual interactions defining masculine capital normalizes the subordination of women. In a fraternity, brothers often refer to women as sexual conquests. Therefore, the more women that a member sexually interacts with, the more respect and approval that member earns. Unfortunately, the peer pressure on fraternity members to sleep with many women increases the likelihood of coercive sex. According to Swartz Insecurity's study of sexual assault on the college campus, among fraternity members, nonconformists are ostracized or will face other equally damaging social consequences, which consequently reinforces the hypermasculine behavior and conformity to collective sexual norms. If the member of the fraternity fights the peer pressure to subordinate women, the member will also be subordinated. Fraternity brothers are often loyal to other brothers, making them less likely to report acts of sexual assaults if the perpetrators are members of their fraternity. While sexual aggression is generally promoted in fraternities, it is also kept quiet. In Swartz and DeCesardes' study, one fraternity member claims that he would lie to protect a close friend from getting in trouble with the law. The sense of community in a fraternity leads to secrecy and loyalty, which can give fraternity members a feeling of protection from the law. They are more confident that they can get away with acts of sexual aggression. Fraternities are often the center of social life on a college campus. That being said, fraternity parties attract the use of drugs and alcohol, often in excess. Under the influence of drugs and alcohol, men are more likely to rationalize sexual aggression. With majority of drinking and drug usage occurring at fraternities, it is no surprise that fraternity members are more likely than non-members to commit sexual assault. According to Charles X. Corprow's studies on fraternity membership, fraternity members find themselves having less sympathy for the victim and judge the female victim to be less socially acceptable and more deviant. I spoke with DU member Mike Spitelli to learn about the environments of fraternities at Lafayette College.
So I think the problem with the stereotypical frat bro is the ones that you see at different schools, their whole life is in a fraternity. When you're at Lafayette, you have people that are fraternity members as well as other things because they can do multiple things. Like, yes, there are people that are only frat bros, and yes, there are people that are, like, only athletes. But when you get them in a large school setting, then it's just, like, that's the only thing they do. So I think that's what's different about Lafayette is people do a lot of different things. A part of people rather than their identity. Fraternity is by definition, like, just a bunch of guys. And when you just get a bunch of guys together, there will be more objectifying of women because it's easy, because sexism is easy in a group. I'm not sure if it's necessarily the fraternity or just boys being boys, but it definitely, fraternity members objectify women more, just because you see people in a group of people and like, oh my god, like, how is he saying these things? And then like when you talk to them one-on-one, people are like, oh yeah, I support feminist ideas. But just, when you put them in a group, that kind of humor is just exacerbated, especially in fraternities, because when you try to make 40 people happy with a joke, the easiest thing to do is demean others. And that's why I think fraternity members objectify women more. But also, there is nature to it, because half the goal of everything is just to be cool. And I think the problem with the hyper-masculine environment of fraternities is like the fact there are only 3 or 4. So when you don't have enough fraternities, people just get divided into like 4 subsections, and I don't like that, because back in the day, people said, oh, there's 16 fraternities and a bunch of sororities too. And then you make people fit a mold rather than celebrating the differences. So like, let's say you have 16 different fraternities, and you have 16 different groups of people, and each person can fit into the one they work, instead of fitting 3 molds. So you have to be hyper-masculine in the environment that we have, because 3 groups of people, 3 or 4, and it's the only ones that notice are just the coolest, and the ones who drink the most, and ones who lift the most, and like, that's sad how people look at how good they are at sports to determine if they'd be a good brother, but I think that's the problem. I think by the way they pick members, people look at their academics, yes, but what people look at are the hyper-masculine quality. Do they lift? Can they acquire females? Wear cool clothes? They find the people who are hyper-masculine to start, and then when you put them in the nature of a group of 40, 50, 60 people who are hyper-masculine, then it's easy to exacerbate. It's easy just to swing off the deep end, lift 4 times a week, and wear sunglasses inside. You get an organization to pick hypermasculine members with hypermasculine members, and it's just